بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وما بعد. So today, inshallah, we're going to talk about riyah. We're going to spend more time on it. We had started discussing it last week. We had also talked about not just riyah, not just showing off, but we had also talked about minor shirk, shirk al-khafi. But today, inshallah, Imam Ghazāli, he's going to discuss a lot more issues regarding this. He's going to talk about taking joy in one's actions. Where is that problematic? Where is it not problematic? When does it fall into riyah? When does it not fall into riyah? Are there situations where I can be happy about the actions that I've performed and I've done? When can I take pleasure in them? When should I not? What are some signs to look for? And what are some markers that I need to seek in myself to make sure that I haven't fallen into that? Yes? Oh, I wish, like, there's so many.
His voice is high.
Yeah. Let's try without them.
Can everybody hear me? Not really? That's fine.
I try so hard. But so here he talks about which is even slighter than the ant's crawl. How many of you are familiar with this hadith? Ishaq, you're done? Okay. If he's done, because if they hit the switch, I think it'll go away. Yusuf, did Shaka call us? So, okay, can you turn it back on because there's too much, there's a buzz.
I said, now, why do you want to go back to him? Tell him I will finish. I didn't know that they have a program. Unless we can't separate the house. Is there any way to separate the house?
No, that's fine. Inshallah, we're going to. How many of you are familiar with the hadith that Imam Ghazāli is indicating here? Some of you might have heard it before. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the thing I fear most for my ummah is minor shirk. And he said this minor shirk is slighter than an ant's crawl on a black stone in the middle of the night. And what did he mean by it? So he's not talking about, he said that major shirk. He said this is not something I'm really worried about. I'm not worried about people falling into paganism. I'm not worried about people falling into idol worship. But the thing I am worried about is this minor shirk. Why is that? Right, so because it's something so slight, and not just that. Can I perceive an ant walking in the dark on a black stone at night? No, I can't. Right, that's not something I can perceive. But can I perceive shirk? Right, like idol worship, like this, that's easily recognizable. It's not something that is hidden. And if somebody tries to proselytize that, or somebody tries to call me to that, immediately what's going to happen? I'm going to recognize, I'm going to see it. It's not an issue of like, something that's so slight. It's going to be like night and day when somebody brings that case to me. So why was the Prophet ﷺ worried about this? The fact that it was slight is something that's really important. What else? Pay attention to it. Even if I get an ant on my clothing, do I perceive it? No, sometimes I don't even perceive that. Meaning that it's something that I become so unaware of that it can come and crawl up on my clothes, right? It can garnish my intention. And when it does that to my intention, what happens to my actions? Well, it's impacted right away for sure. So if I fall into minor shirk, what happens to my actions? They're invalid. So this is why he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was worried about this for this long. He said that when you perform this action, you do this deed, you go through all of this effort, and then in the end, what happens to that action? It becomes invalidated. Why? Because I never paid attention to what? To my intention. And was I being sincere in that action? And we had said last time, when we had spoken about it, that our entire lives are seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, right? Even if it be in a singular action or it be in a particular action. I am looking to gain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favor. I'm looking to gain His mercy, I'm looking to gain His happiness, I'm looking to gain His pleasure. And if we look, even He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, He mentions individual cases. So how many of you are familiar with the story of the prostitute that He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam shared with us? What did she do? She went to a well to drink water. So she pulls up some water, she drinks it, and what does she see? And she sees a dog. Right, so this dog, what happens? It's clearly thirsty. So what does she do? She goes back into the well. She goes back into the well and she brings up water, even though it's exhausting, right? It's not something that's easy because she actually has to go down into the well. And why does she need to go down into the well? Because the rope that's there is clearly not wet. It's not long enough. Otherwise, why would anybody climb down into a well? But she goes through that effort, she comes up. With that, she wins Allah's favor. With that, she wins Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, and Allah allows her into His presence. This is what we're trying to do, right? We are going through our life hoping that even just one action allows us Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy so that we can enter into His paradise, and we ask Him Azza wa Jalla to enter us into it. So Riyah, he talks about it from two angles. He says that there is that which is apparent, right, which is clear, showing off, that which is hidden. And the hidden one is the one that is problematic. And he says, as for the apparent one, he says that this person is clearly motivated by some type of reward. And what does that reward look like for the person who's showing off? It's going to be worldly. And we said that Imam Ghazāli, he summarizes worldly reward in two ways. With status and status, fame, and wealth. Right, so these are the two ways for me to benefit from that. So in that reward, either it can be immediate or it can be delayed. He's saying regardless, it's irrelevant. So if I'm doing that action for someone else, whether that reward be immediate or whether it be delayed, this is something that is irrelevant and it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to matter. He says, as for the hidden, he says that this is from a lack of motivation. What does that mean? So he says that this lack of motivation, what happens is that action feels lighter. Meaning that if a person, and we'll talk about some more examples, that if a person prays, all of a sudden when he's around people, what happens to that prayer? It becomes easier. Were the people his motivation to do that action? No. It's just the feeling that he gets once he gets into the prayer. And see how different that is? And see how one is so much more subtle than the next? And he goes on to say, he says that an example of this is like in Qiyam. So if a person regularly makes Qiyam, a person regularly makes Tahajjud, this person, he gets up and he prays at night, he says that this has an apparent effect, or it can have a hidden effect. On what? He said the apparent effect is that the action becomes easier, which is what we had mentioned previously. Right? That is something that while hidden, you can still see the effects, superficial. That this is something that a person becomes aware of. What becomes hidden is his pleasure, meaning that he enjoys it. The action is not easier now, right? It doesn't have an effect on an action. Where does the effect happen? On his heart. So instead of having an effect on the action itself, the effect is on his heart. And that pleasure is what he calls the most dangerous. And what is he saying is that this person, what we know him to be dedicated, right? Because what is he doing? He's making qiyam. This is not just like a regular person. This person is making a qiyam. This person is dedicated. This person is sincere. And not just that, he hates showing off. He doesn't want to. But the fact that people are now aware of it brings joy to his heart. It doesn't make the action any easier because he's already committed to it. But the fact that it's bringing pleasure to his heart, this is what is problematic. He's saying that this same person, what will he now seek? Instead of being dedicated, sincere, and hating showing off, what's going to happen is he's going to start seeking that pleasure. Right? He's going to start seeking that joy again. Remember those feedback loops, right? Ghazāli is very infamous for this. Time and again, he mentions how does a person fall into these traps? Because he falls into these negative feedback loops. He falls into these negative characteristics. Even though his intention was what? His intention was sincere. even in sincerity, just that feeling can now lead this person to this evil, to this pleasure. So he says, how do you break that cycle? How do I get out of it? The moment I feel that joy, what should I do? Right, I have to push it down. I have to react to it in a negative way. And he's saying that this is the only cure. This is the only way to actually deal with that feeling of joy in your life. And he also says, okay, well, are there cases and are there spaces and are there situations where I'm allowed to feel joy with actions? What do you guys think?
Yes.
Yes, there are. And he talks about five. He talks about five situations. Clearly one of them is negative, right? So if I'm taking pleasure in the fact that people are watching me and watching my action, that is a clear situation of being problematic. Yes?
Before you mention the Bible,
Sure.
how do you push it out?
So he'll talk about it. He'll talk about it. So there are two ways. Either I have to say that this feeling is wrong, right? That joy that I'm feeling, then this is not good, and this is going to take away from my sincerity, right? That's one way. I have to negatively push against it. The other way is to channel it into different methods, and he'll talk about it for you. So what is it? All right. Which is the next section that he discusses. All right, how do I do that? Okay, which is a valid question. All right, well, how do I react negatively to this? How do I deal with this react? How do I deal with this pleasure? How do I deal with this joy to make sure that it doesn't have an effect on my actions? And he says here that, so he mentions some examples of how people fall into this. So a person, they might show humility. A person might lower their voice. A person might dry their lips, meaning out of excessive fasting, right? So when you don't drink, your lips become dry. And when people look at you, they think, oh, this person's really pious, he's really righteous. Making signs of tears, right? Sometimes people, they'll act like they're crying, or they'll start talking, they'll act like they're upset about something. And it's sad, but it's reality. Because we said that all of these signs of piety, why would anyone want to show that they're pious? Because they want to win status with the people. There might be subjects that they discuss, things that they might talk about, information that they might share. Why? Because they want an audience. And because they seek that audience. Yes?
So like, some of these, like, you could fake it.
Sure.
So, like, access fast, like fasting.
You're not faking the action.
I get the
Right.
impression, but
Yeah.
it's like, there's an excessive amount of effort they go into
Sure.
doing that. You're saying that, like, if you're doing that, you kind of just not hold fast is valid.
Absolutely. That's the danger of it.
And in this case, like, if someone's going above and beyond what's required to excessively fast.
Yes.
For the outward appearance of it, it's even worse.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Why? Because my whole action, all this effort that I did is for what? Haba'an manthur, right? It's in vain. It's all in dust. Yes.
All kind of fasting?
This is the person who fasts with the intention of what? What's that person's intention? Huh? To show people that he is pious. Yes.
So are these all examples of like someone?
Who's faking?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because at first I thought this was like somebody who described pious.
No. This is somebody who's faking it.
Okay.
Right? Why are they doing all these things? Because it's very easy to superficially show a lot of things, right? So if a person wears tattered clothing, or a person doesn't iron their clothes, or a person walks and they're like, they walk very slowly, or sometimes people they'll walk with like a sibha, right? You know what I mean? Or even when they're talking to you. And I'm not here to doubt anybody's intention, obviously, right? That's not my goal, and that's not my purpose. But is it possible that someone does all of these religious acts in front of others because they want to trick others into believing that they're pious? Because with that show of piety, what happens with the people? If I think somebody's pious, what am I start putting that person on a pedestal. I start protesting that person. I'll now give this person access to spaces and areas and people who I know who wouldn't get other people access to. I might start doing favors for this person. Right? I might start helping this person out. And this isn't to say that seeking status and wealth is a problem, because we had spoken about this before, right? There's a certain amount of status, and there's a certain amount of trust I have to gain with people, which is important. It's not about faking everything, right? Why am I nice and why am I kind to others? Because I'm supposed to respect others, and that will win me status and respect with them. If I want to do business with someone, will I ever do business with someone who I don't trust? No, right? That doesn't make any sense. And even seeking wealth, like, don't I need to seek wealth? Don't I need money in order to buy things? So just like I need to seek a certain amount of wealth, I need to seek a certain amount of trust and status and have a positive reputation with others so that I can deal with them. Otherwise, if I don't have a positive reputation, how can I open a business? If I don't have a positive reputation, how can I get married? If I don't have a positive reputation, how can I get hired? How can I teach, right? There's nothing we can do in society if I don't have a positive reference. And this is even in the worldly sense. When I go to apply for a job, what is one of the first things that they ask? They ask for experience and references. And many times the experience and references is more important than where I studied. And if I don't get good references, are they going to hire me? No, they're not. But so even socially, this is something that's really important. It's something that we all do and something we all seek and things we should seek, right? I'm not saying that we shouldn't. Like, these are things that we need in order to navigate our lives. So this happens with all of us, right? I can't say that there isn't any. Is there anyone here? Like, raise your hand if you don't enjoy being greeted warmly. Right? Oh, assalamualaikum, like, hug, like, how are you doing? How you been? Is there anybody who's going to be upset because of that? No. Or praising someone? Is there anyone who's going to dislike that? People who don't like praise? That can be good. Right? That's not necessarily like people who accommodate them, right? So they'll be like, instead of standing in line, they'll be like, hey, listen, man, I got you. They'll take you to the side, they'll bring you the food or whatever the case may be. There are different ways that people accommodate. That's important. So why is he mentioning that here? He's saying that all of these, they're a result of what? They're a result of our actions. They're a result of the example that we gave. Right? This person is happy because now he's achieved what it was that he was looking to get. So if a person is feigning this, right? If a person is showing prayer, and they're showing fasting, and they're showing that they're accommodating, and they show that they're piety, now, why are they happy that people greet them? Because they're greeting them under the false pretense. Why are they happy that they're accommodated? Because now they're being accommodated under that false pretense. Why do they enjoy the praise, even though the praise isn't justified? Right? This person is just doing it for show. They're not actually committed to this, and they're not being sincere. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all sincerity. And that's the feedback. So, and then the opposite also happens, right? It's not just a feeling of joy for all these positive things. You also have these negative feelings when the opposite happens. So I'm making all this effort and I don't feel respected. Right? I'm making all this effort and I don't feel accommodated. I'm making all this effort and people still aren't praising me. Like, what's going on? And I think the second one is more applicable for people who are sincere as well. So if I am sincere and I'm not accommodated, what should I do my best not to feel? I shouldn't try to feel burdened. If I don't feel like people are giving me respect, I shouldn't feel bad. Should I allow people to disrespect me? No, absolutely not. Right? There's no room for that. If somebody is disrespecting me, then I have to stand up for myself and I have to defend myself. I have every right to do that. But I can't go into a space expecting to be respected, especially if nobody knows me. So what are some common ways that we seek respect? Yeah, absolutely. Caring about others. Right? It's a very easy way. Just care for the people in front of me. If I care for this person, then I'm hoping, like, part of caring for that person is that way. They'll also care for me and they'll care for my feelings. What's another one? So what are some ways that people use? Some people use their credentials. Have you guys ever dealt with a person like that? It's like, well, I've done this, and I've studied this, and I have this. How well does that work? Right. For some people, they might be like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like, they might take it as credibility, because, like, having that appeal to authority is something that sometimes is very natural. But for some people, they'll be like, no. I disagree. I don't think that's a way to gain respect. I think that's a way of actually expressing arrogance. Right? If I have the need to push my credentials onto others, If I have a need to take advantage of others, and you know, I mean, like, and express my feeling of authority over others, then there's another problem, there's another issue. And many times this happens in clergy circles, like, and I've been there. Like, so if you go, you said with like imams and stuff, it's like, oh, you know, well, I did my master's from here, and I did my PhD from here, and I have ijazat, and blah, blah, blah. I think if you want to gain the respect of the people, then it should be with your knowledge. It shouldn't be with a list of credentials. Absolutely. And if you can't express simple concepts, I don't care how long your credential list is. You're not benefiting me. And I'm not going to respect you anymore. If anything, I'm going to be more disappointed, right? Because you gave me this list of credentials, and now you can't even explain simple concepts to me. I'm like, well, but you're not able to relay this information. I can't trust you. I can't deal with this. Yes? Oh, from showing off. Because people trust them. And if, like I said, if people trust me, if I'm showing that I'm pious, and I'm showing that I'm righteous, and I'm showing that I'm praying, I'm doing all these things, and this is probably a situation that many of us have faced. My father, I remember he gave me a call one time, he's like, hey, he's like, Farhan, I want to do a business with this guy. I'm like, okay, do you know anybody that's done business with him? He was like, well, he comes to the masjid for 5 prayers. He's like, do you know anyone that's done business with him? He's like, both of his sons are Bafal. I was like, Dad, do you know anyone that's done business with this person? And he was like, so he tells me that, yeah, there's one person, but he had like a bad business dealing with him. So I was like, don't do business with him. And he's like, yeah, but he's so white, religious. He's so pious. It's like, you know what I mean? So did he benefit? Yeah, absolutely he benefited, because now he has access to business dealings that he wouldn't have access to if he didn't show all of those things. He has access to people now who he probably wouldn't have had access to before. So what does it give you? It gives you status. And status in many circles is equivalent to money. Because if I have access to certain people, guess what I can do? I can borrow money from people who I didn't have access to. I can get business ideas from people who I didn't have access to. I can make investments in things that I didn't have access to before. There's nothing wrong with gaining that access, right? Like, so again, I'll be very clear. There's nothing wrong with gaining access to those circles. Like, we have to gain access to those circles. I remember a brother had said things like, man, like, we live in an era where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And I was like, yeah, I agree. I was like, so what do you think the solution is? He's like, and he was like, well, what do you think the solution is? I was like, just get rich. Like, if you can become in that strata, that's okay. Like, that's it. You can become richer as well. And I know it might sound easy, but subhanAllah, like, we really do live in an era where we have access to so many tools. We have access to so many facilities. We have access to so many people that historically we never had access to. Like, yeah, like, you literally can look up anything on YouTube. How do I start a business and you will get a series of videos of them. How do I invest in this? You'll get a series of investment videos. How do I understand to get into the stock market? I'll get a series. How do I become an Islamic investor? You'll get a series of videos. It's amazing. Like, the era of information that we live in, the access that we have. People are like, oh, you know, what are people supposed to do? They can't do it with one job. I said, you know how most people are doing it who are in that strata? They have multiple series of passive income, right? Because they've involved themselves in multiple businesses. Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah, it's difficult. Yes, it's challenging. I agree with all those things 100%. Does that mean we stay static? Does that mean that we don't change? Does that mean that the thing that worked for our parents 20, 30 years ago is going to work for us today? Like, we have to be just as dynamic. Like, we have to update ourselves. Like, we have to keep moving. The way we hustle and the way we work has to be very different than the way that they did. For them, they had a very defined pathway. It was very clear. For us, that might not be the case. For them, it was like, what? Go to school, get a degree, graduate, get a job, buy a house. Yes, that was the general pathway. Houses are almost unaffordable for people who are just entering, right? No, for people who are just entering the workforce. Housing is almost unaffordable. It's very challenging. So what do you do? figure out ways to develop other streams of income. And you don't have to do the same amount of work that our parents did. Many of us who are sitting here, we are earning more today than our parents did at their same point in their lives. Well, how come we don't have as much to show for it? Like, these are questions we need to ask ourselves. And they worked a lot harder than we did. For many of us, our parents paved the way for us, or they paid for our schooling, or they got us a car, right? There's so many things. And what did they have when they came? They didn't have anything, right? Once that $5 ran out, guess what? They didn't eat. When that $5 went out, they didn't go anywhere. They walked, right? That's just how it was. And I think understanding on how to deal with those adversities and dealing with those difficulties, it's what builds here. So over here, all of these things that we had said, they can jeopardize reward. There's no doubt about that. If a person has ill intent, if a person has wrong intent, then these things can affect them. So there are three narrations here. I'm not going to read all of them, but I will read the third one. It says, "Those of God to say that the sincere ones are the ones who will be saved from this hidden showing off." So if a person is truly sincere, he doesn't need to worry about shirk. He doesn't need to worry about shirk. Why? What? So a person who is sincere, how come they don't have to worry about shirk?
They care about seeing that.
Okay, so awareness, good. What else? Yes.
Your rewards was wrong.
Okay, knowing that your reward is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, having confidence. Good. What? A person.
How sincerity is to check if this
Right.
is
A person who's sincere, what are they constantly going to do? They're constantly going to check themselves. Right? This muhasabah is something that is very powerful. How many times do I do a check-in on myself daily? Right? We have to ask ourselves. Sometimes we take our actions for granted. Sometimes we take our deeds for granted. Sometimes we're not serious because we just assume, right, things fall into a routine. But when was the last time we stopped and we're like, man, why am I praying? That Ramadan is coming. We should ask ourselves, are we fasting? When we come for Qiyam, right, is this the best way for me to show my Qiyam? Or am I doing it because I don't want my mom to say anything? Or because, and the thing is, I can have secondary intentions. Part of the reason I want to come to Qiyam is the social element, yes? Right, so a lot of us, why do we go to a particular masjid? Because there are particular people that we want to see there. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But that is usually after the prayer, right? It's not during the prayer itself. But during the prayer, like how much time do I spend with the Quran? Why or why not? Right? These are things that if a person is already trained himself in doing those things, it becomes so much easier. It becomes so much easier to stay away from the than to stay away from the issue. So over here, he says that if a person is sincere, what does he try to do? He tries to deceive others concerning his good deeds. And when he tries to deceive others concerning his good deeds, there are two things that he can do. Either he's going to hide his good deeds, or he can hide his sin. But the person who's sincere where is he going to place more effort? In hiding deeds, right? And subhanAllah, I found this so amazing. He said that this person will actually make more effort in hiding their good deeds than they will in hiding their sin. Because which one has and why is that? Because which one has a greater effect on sincerity? The good deeds. Greater effect on sincerity. Good deeds. Right? Because that's where you're seeking the reward. Am I seeking a reward for bad deeds? No, absolutely not.
but you don't want to brag.
No, that's what he's saying. So if you don't want to brag, what do you try to do? You try to do the opposite. You actually try to hide it. You don't want people to see that you're doing good deeds. Yeah. No, you don't want to brag for sure. Right? That's wrong. You shouldn't brag about your bad deeds for sure. But over here, he's saying that hide both. And not just that, you're going to hide both. And if I have a choice on where to make more effort, where should I make more effort? In the good deeds. And why is that? Because I hope by hiding that deed, what am I seeking? I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept. And I feel that there's a more opportunity for that deed to be accepted if nobody else knows it. So, there are 4 parts to this via the but we'll continue the discussion. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So we'll talk about the 4 exceptions next time, inshallah, but we'll stop here. Never, you like whisper. I only catch like parts of what you say. This, all I hear is like insincere, showing off. Yeah. 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 There can be. So if I have 100, don't I have the same problem? The question is,
I'll give you some.
if the person
Okay.
shows their
Tastes good.
Exactly. So if I have 100 leads, I want most of those leads to be there. And there are certain situations where
It's really good.
there are specific situations where I can show them the lead and where it's actually better to take. No. Next time we're going to discuss that. There are 4 situations that Ghazāli mentions where it's not only is it good, but it should show those good deeds, those situations. So, but most of the time, I should make my effort in hiding it. But that should be most of the time. Some of the effort, and then where I can show it, there is space where I can and I should, and we'll talk. Yeah. I mean, that's between them and Allah. I don't know. I can't speak on everyone. The only thing, remember, all of these methods and all of these recommendations are for us, right? How people actualize that and how people do it in their own lives, that's between them and Allah. And not just that. Is Ghazāli teaching us these things so that we can go around and say, oh, you're not being sincere, although this person is being sincere? Is this why we're learning it? I don't know. I have a feeling that this is what you're going to take. Are you going to come with a list for the next thing? Next year. Yeah. So if you do that, we'll change it. No, and I understand some people, they might naturally, they just do things publicly. I get it. But my suggestion, again, most of the things most of the good we do, we should hide. Yeah. Come. Jazakallah khair. Wallahu a'lam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you guys could just help put the chairs on the side, we'd appreciate it.